スト翻訳始まるよ。
皆さんこんにちは、花です。今日はメダリストエピソード9からいのりちゃんとエマちゃんの競技プログラム分析します。本当に見てくれてありがとうございました。グッドボタンとチャンネル登録よろしくお願いします。Alright. First element, a single axle. A single axle is worth 1.10 points. And I would say each judge probably gave her a +1, which would give her about an extra 0.10 on GOE. So we're going to give her 1.20 points for this element. And as a reminder, just really quick, GOE is a very subjective thing. While there are bullet points that they are supposed to hit in order for a judge to award that GOE, the judges are looking at it in real time, so they don't necessarily always follow those bullet points. So it's very subjective. So I'm just taking a guess. If it ends up being where Inori or Emma scores end up being way different than what they were in the actual anime based off of what I say, it's probably because there's just a difference in what I'm thinking the GOE would be compared to what judges would actually award her. Moving on. Double Salchow. A double Salchow is worth 1.30 points. Once again, I would say the judges gave her probably a +1 due to the speed and flow of the jump, meaning she'll get about 0.15 grade of execution added to the jump. Something about how I couldn't focus when I was watching this. I was just like, I have to rewatch these to to be like, okay, this is what she did. Double loop. Again, very nicely done. I'm still going to assume the judges probably only gave her a +1. At the lower levels, they don't usually lean towards giving above +1s unless they do something really, really insanely good. If it's just executed well, they might even give her a 0, but she does have really good speed and flow, meaning I do still think the judges would most likely give her a +1. A double loop is worth 1.70 points, and with the +1s that the judges would be giving her, she's looking at about 0.20 grade of execution added on to this jump. Single axle combo with a twizzle. So as I've said before, when you do a combo, which is 2 jumps back to back with no skating in between, you get the base value of both of those jumps added together. A single Lutz is worth 0.60 points, and the single axle, of course, is worth 1.10 points, bringing her base value to 1.70 points. And then again, I'll give her 1s across the board. That's going to be kind of the consistent thing. She's performing all of them quite well, but I don't think she's quite where the 2 would be, so they'll give her an extra 0.10 to that, bringing her total for this jump sequence to a 2.80. Hey guys, Editing Hannah here. You get me full, editing look at all. I'm not a mathematician, and I'm not trying to ever say that I'm a mathematician. I'm a figure skater. And I am fully aware that I failed to just do simple math because a Lutz is worth 0.6 points and an axle is worth 1.10 points, which would actually bring our total to 1.70 and 1.80 is the total, not 2.80. And believe it or not, for the entirety of the rest of this video, I did not realize my math mistake. So did I ruin the video? No. However, what I need from all of you is to just pretend that I said 1.8, not 2.8, and just deduct 1 point from the rest of this, and that will make the end a little bit mushy, but it doesn't affect a ton of stuff because at the end of the day, Inori lost. Anyway, yeah, I don't realize that math mistake for the entire video, so I apologize. I will make sure the text that I put as I finish editing this is correct, and I'll fix what I'm verbally saying and write what is actually correct, because I'm a figure skater. I'm not ever saying that I'm good at math. Anyway, yeah, you got the full editing look for this, because I deserve it. I deserve to be laughed at for this. So anyway, back to the video. So we have a step sequence here. I'm going off of the rule book within the United States and going to say that this is not leveled. This is going to be probably a choreographic step sequence, which means they all have the same base value no matter what they do. Okay, so a choreographic step sequence is worth 3.0 points, so a big point getter there, and it was kind of hard to tell. I'm just gonna go with the same flow that I've been going with and say the judges gave her +1s across the board because it looked very well done, and I actually have a protocol up in front of me where it is a choreographic step sequence. Someone is saying it's worth 2 points though. It might be different based off of level, so we're gonna say it's worth 2 points instead of 3 points just because she is a lower level. So 2 points, and this protocol has this at all ones across the board, and they got an extra 0.33 added to it, meaning she got 2.33 points for the step sequence. Okay, and we've got our final big element, a flying sit spin. Okay. So for a flying sit spin, a flying entry is going to give you a larger base value. So it doesn't necessarily count as a level, it just counts as a higher base value than just doing a sit spin itself. And then she did one feature where she put her nose to her knee, so that would bring that spin to a level 1. And then she also did a broken leg with a sideways lean, which is a second feature, so she got a level 2. And then I'm just guessing here, but I believe she held that final position for 8 rotations, which is an additional feature. So we're going to say she got a flying sit spin level 3, which has the highest base value of all her elements, coming in at 2.60 points. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here. In my history of skating, my spins got higher grade of execution than jumps because it is a little bit easier for the judges to kind of sit on it and watch it and award it greater GOE than they would a jump because it takes up a lot more time than a jump does. So I'm going to say that the judges gave her a +2 across the board on this spin. Spins are incredibly difficult to keep speed throughout the entire spin, especially when one of your features is 8 rotations. I don't think y'all realize how much effort goes into doing an 8 rotation spin. So I'm going to say she got +2s across the board, which would be about a half a point added to her grade of execution, bringing her total on the spin itself to 3.10 points, a very big point getter. That brings her total element score to 12.78 points, and then of course there is the second mark, which is the program component score, otherwise known as PCS. There are 3 factors into this. There is performance and execution, which is based off of your overall performance. This is the part of the component scores that is supposed to go down if you fall or have a rough performance. There's interpretation, which is of course going to be based off of how well you interpret your music. And then there is skating skills. Skating skills going to be based completely off of how much control you have over your blade, how deep your edges are, etc. In the case of Inori's level, that's going to be about the same amount of points as her technical element score, which her total score in the anime was 24.32. So if her components were just a little bit less than 12 points, you've got your total score for Inori. So a couple things to keep in mind here. She only did 2 double jumps and then 2 single axels. We only saw 1 spin, 1 step sequence. Again, I'm basing my knowledge off of American rules just because that's where I'm from and those are the rule books that I can read. The scoring system is the international judging system, meaning the base value is universal. However, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do is going to be based country off of country. But as you can see, I've said this many times before, spins are incredibly important. If she did in fact get a level 3 on this spin, like I called it, it is worth more than even a jump combination in her program. So very, very important to get those levels in your spins as well as get the high level jumps. So what we're going to do now is we're going to watch Emma's program. We're going to break down the points that she got, and that's going to lead us to talking about why I think Emma still beat Inori, but not by a ton. All right. We have a double Lutz to start us off. A double Lutz, like I've mentioned, is the most difficult double jump before an axel, and the only reason an axel is more difficult is because it has an extra half rotation than the Lutz. The Lutz is a very difficult jump because you have to take off from an outside edge instead of an inside edge, and it goes against your bodily anatomy in order to do that, meaning that some skaters will never be able to master a Lutz. I was never able to because I couldn't force my hips to do such a weird move, essentially. A double Lutz is worth 2.10 points. And we're gonna kind of follow the same thing I did with Inori, assuming that all the judges give her a +1. They throw that into a calculator, and I'm going to say she gets 0.15 points added to that base value, bringing her total to 2.25 points for that jump. So already quite a bit more than Inori's first jump. We got double loop. Double loop is worth 1.7 points. We got +1s across the board as assumed. So she got probably the same amount of points as Inori for that, 1.90. Single axle, once again, worth 1.10 points. And we're going to say that she got +1s across the board. I'm starting to get a little bit repetitive, but you guys get the meaning behind it. So she got 1.20 points for that single axle. Again, the GOEs are very subjective. It is hard to tell because it is an anime who's actually performing them better. There would be a little bit more ebb and flow in the GOEs in a real competition, but it's very hard to say exactly what they're going to get. So I'm keeping it consistent just to make it a little bit easier to follow. So it is very important to mention in this moment here, Inori is mentioning that she seems to be a better skater than Inori, meaning her component score would also come in probably a little bit higher than Inori's. So keep that in mind as well. Your second mark, your PCS, is still very important, and you want to continue to nurture that part along with your technical element score. I believe that was our step sequence right there. I'm not going to call it just yet because I'm not completely sure. We got a double flip, double toe loop combo. This is huge, okay? So like I said with Inori, who had a single axle combo, a combination jump, they're going to take the base value of both jumps and add them together. So this is where she gets a lot more points than Inori. A double flip is worth 1.80 points, and a double toe loop is worth 1.30 points. So altogether, this element, without any added grade of execution, is already worth 3.10 points. Crazy, okay? Inori did have an element with that base value, but that was her spin, which automatically starts a little bit higher. And then if Emma got +1s across the board, she got about 0.25 points added to that, bringing her total for this element 3.35 points. Big. Also, I do know that was Emma's final jump, so I'm just going to compare the jump base value of Inori to Emma without adding everything else. Inori's jump base value was 7.25. Emma's was 8.70, so she already has a fairly large lead over Inori. So that was her step sequence, we're going to say. Same as Inori, she can't get a level because of the low level that she is in. So we're going to say the base value of that was 2.0 points. But because they're making it obvious that she seems to be a better skater than Inori, I'm going to give her slightly higher grade of execution on that. I believe I gave Inori +1s on that, but I'm going to give Emma +2s on that, which would give her about an extra 0.60 points based off of the protocols I am looking at, bringing her total to 2.60 points for that step sequence. And here we have our final spin, which is a flying camel. Okay. Now, here's what is interesting. That was a flying camel spin, which again, the fly is not a level in itself, but the base value is more than just a regular camel spin. However, I did not see any features in this. She did not do any special positions in the camel, and she did not hold it for 8. I only counted 5 to 6 rotations, depending on when they started it, and it's anime, so it's kind of hard to count. Meaning, I believe she just got a base value for this flying camel spin, which is only worth 1.6 points compared to Inori's flying sit spin with a level 3 that's worth 2.6 points. So now we're starting to even out here with the technical element score. However, she did that flying camel spin very, very well, so I'm going to give her +2s across the board, but the base value was lower than Inori, so we're going to give her an extra 0.40 points for that grade of execution, bringing her total base value of this element to 2.0 points. A big difference from Inori's 3.10 0.10 points. But the keyword is almost. Emma's total element score that I have on here is 13.30 compared to Inori's 12.78. Her total score was 25.57, which is a little over a point better than Inori's. So that small lead that she had in the technical element score plus a little bit of extra PCS is why Emma won. Okay, so I hope that was easy to follow. Let me know if you want me to break things down a little bit better than that. It is a little bit difficult because, like I said, grade of execution is a big player within the figure skating world and the scores that you get. However, it is a little bit subjective because judges don't tend to follow those bullet points that they are presented with. I'm just doing it based off of what I see at the lower level competitions, and then I also don't know the exact way they calculate it, so a lot of it was kind of just guessing. However, the base value is absolute. That is the way it is across all countries in the world and all competitions that use IJS, since it is a universal system. But my main point in bringing this up is to show you all how important it is to have higher level spins in your program. If Emma did a more difficult spin, she would have beat Inori by a lot more because her jump base value was just that much higher to begin with. But it also goes to show at these levels that a good spinner can keep up with a good jumper because their scores were closer than I was even originally thinking before I broke it down. So it is very important to mention that sometimes you need to really make sure you work on both sides, the jumps and the spins, and then of course the PCS, which is also very important, the program component scores. This sport is not just jumps. This sport is everything. You have to be a well-rounded skater to do well, especially at these lower levels, because there are more rules involved than at the senior level where we see someone like Ilya Malinin winning, even though you would argue that his spins and his PCS is quite a bit weaker than the rest of the field. He's still winning things because there's not really a ceiling on the jumps that he can do. At these levels, there is. You're only allowed a certain amount of jumps. You're only allowed a certain level of jumps. I would assume in this case, the double Lutz is the highest jump they're allowed to do. You are not allowed to do a double axel or higher. But in senior, they literally are like, okay, do whatever you want. So there becomes that difference. You can get away with not being a well-rounded skater if you're doing these incredibly difficult jumps that no one else is doing. If that makes any sense. I'm trying to break it down in a way that makes sense. So lower levels, you have to be well-rounded. In the case of Emma, because she had the higher jumps and the good component scores, she was still able to beat Inori even though she maybe wasn't as strong at the spin. Also of note, at this level in the US, they're doing 2 spins, not just 1. So in the US, there's even more room. I would say in this case, if this happened in the US and there were 2 spins, Inori might have still won with the less difficult jumps. So anyway, this was again a very information heavy breakdown, but I hope that it helps you understand the scoring a little bit better and really breaks down why Emma beat Inori, but only by a little bit because of how well-rounded of a skater Inori is.
それでは今日出てきた英単語を振り返ってみましょう。
Reminder.
この単語は誰かに何かを思い出させるための注意喚起や通知を意味します。仕事の締め切り、重要な予定、日常のルーチンなどを忘れないようにするために使われます。携帯電話の通知やメモ、口頭での注意喚起など様々な形で使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
I set a reminder on my phone for the meeting at 3 p.m.
午後3時の会議のためにスマホにリマインダーを設定しました。
This photo is a reminder of the great time we had last summer.
この写真は去年の夏に楽しかった時間を思い出させてくれる。ちなみに改めて注意喚起として言っておくと、コメントではちゃんと言葉遣いに気をつけてください。たまに喧嘩してる人がいますが、あんまりひどいとそれなりの対処をしちゃいますよ。
Believe it or not.
この表現は、信じられないかもしれないけど、驚くかもしれないが、という意味の表現で、意外な事実や驚くべき出来事を紹介するときに使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
Believe it or not, he finished the marathon without any training.
信じられないかもしれないけど、彼は一切トレーニングなしでマラソンを完走した。
Believe it or not, she learned to speak 5 languages fluently.
驚くかもしれないが、彼女は5カ国語を流暢に話せるようになった。世の中には信じられないことがたくさんありますよね。特にネットではいろいろな信じられない話が流れてきますが、個人的には自分で実際に見たものを信じるようにしてます。難しい世の中ですよね。
Deduct.
この単語は、お金や点数などを差し引く、控除することを意味します。特に税金、給料、割引、スコア計算などの場面でよく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The company will deduct taxes from your salary automatically.
会社はあなたの給料から税金を自動的に控除します。
They deducted points for incorrect answers on the test.
テストでは間違った答えに対して点数が差し引かれた。フィギュアスケートでは要素の出来が悪いと減点になったりすることもありますよね。クレジットカードの引き落としや給料の差し引きなど、この単語からいろいろと辛いことを連想しちゃいました。
Verbally.
この単語は口頭で、または言葉を使ってという意味です。書面ではなく直接話すことで情報を伝える場合に使われます。会話や討論、指示のやり取りなどに関する場面で頻繁に使用されます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The manager verbally approved the project, but we need written confirmation.
マネージャーは口頭でプロジェクトを承認したが、書面での確認が必要だ。
He expressed his feelings verbally rather than in writing.
彼は手紙ではなく、言葉で自分の気持ちを伝えた。日本語でも専門的な書物でバーバルなというカタカナの表現を使うこともありますが、まさにこの英単語がその複詞形です。新しいカタカナ用語が出ても、英語をきちんと学べば対応できます。多分。
Go out on a limb.
この表現は、リスクを冒す、大胆な行動をとるという意味のイディオムです。特に、誰かのために勇気ある決断をしたり、自分の意見を主張する際に使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
He went out on a limb to defend his friend in court.
彼は法廷で友人を守るためにリスクを冒した。
I'm going out on a limb here, but I think we should completely change our strategy.
大胆な提案をするけど、戦略を完全に変えた方がいいと思う。人生では時にリスクを冒して行動した方がいい場面がありますね。安定はリスクという人もいますので、その時々で自分にとってどんな行動が大事なのかを見極めるのは大事だと私は思います。
Repetitive.
この単語は、同じことが何度も繰り返される単調な状態を指します。特に退屈な作業や変化のない状況に対して使われることが多いです。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The job became boring because it was too repetitive.
その仕事はあまりにも単調で退屈になった。
Listening to the same song over and over can be repetitive.
同じ曲を何度も聴くのは単調になりがちだ。動画の解説では GOE の評価が繰り返しで同じになっていることがありますが、これは動画的にわかりやすくしているだけで、実際にはもっと評価には波があるみたいですね。そこは実際の試合を見て確認してみたいところです。
Ebb and flow.
この表現は何かの盛衰や浮き沈みを意味する表現です。特に人生の変化、経済の変動、感情の起伏などの流れを説明するときに使われます。潮の満ち引きを意味することから、この表現が生まれました。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The economy goes through an ebb and flow, with periods of growth and decline.
経済には成長と衰退の周期的な浮き沈みがある。
Relationships have their ebb and flow, with good times and bad times.
人間関係には浮き沈みがあり、いい時もあれば悪い時もある。動画の解説では GOE の評価が繰り返して同じになっていることがありますが、これは動画的にわかりやすくしているだけで、実際にはもっと評価には波があるみたいですね。さっきも同じことを言った？何を言っているのかちょっとわかりませんね。